My name is Punum Bhatia, and I'm talking from Denver, Colorado. And it's great to see familiar faces over here. I think one of the main things that has helped me through this very difficult time is all of you. One of the best things I did in my life was to join the Lead Montessori a couple years ago, because this has become a community that has really stood by us in this time that was so difficult. And I never felt alone. I mean, I reached out to all of you separately and together as a group, and I've been learning from you and knowing that we've all been in this together. And when you think about it, we are all from different parts of the world, but we've all gone through the same experience, and we have got strength from each other. So Mirka asked me today to speak about Maria Montessori's lockdown in India and how that paralleled with our own coronavirus quarantine, and where did Montessori find her strength? That's one of the questions that I'm going to address. And what did she learn, and how can we learn from her experiences to face our hardships today? And how can we stay strong during these turbulent times? So those are some of the questions that I'm planning to answer in today's talk. Yes, and I can hear the lawnmowers out in the distance. So spring is here and life is awakening again. So that's a good background noise that I'm having. So I'd like to begin by reading from the preface of my newly published book, Cultivator of the Human Spirit, Revisiting Maria Montessori's Journey. Through the 30 years and more that I have been involved in Montessori, I have studied Maria Montessori's philosophy and methodology in depth, reading her books over and over again, and each time coming up with something new. She never fails to surprise me, nudging me to think harder and deeper, and always making it clear that our work be centered on the child. It was only natural then that when this crisis hit us, and I had to make the very hard decision to close our school down on March 13th, 2020, that I turned to my teacher once again. I was looking for insight, for wisdom, to regain my balance so I could deal with the situation effectively. The parents were unhappy, some voicing their opinions clearly and loudly, disagreeing with my decision, still thinking this was just the flu, and everyone was overreacting. My teachers and staff were looking to me for guidance, and honestly speaking, I had no idea what to do next. None of us had been in this situation before. It was so totally unprecedented. In hindsight, I think that what I decided to do was totally instinctive, and it was perhaps the best thing to do under the circumstances. With the children at home, the teachers and I met at school. We steered away from any decision-making or policy writing. We took it upon ourselves to clean the school. And when I say clean, it was like every corner and every crevice. The washer, the dryer, the dishwasher, running many cycles, and each of our beautiful Montessori materials painstakingly cleaned by the teachers. It took us a full day to do this, disinfecting and sanitizing. But there was so much harmony amongst us as we put the prepared environment in order. As Montessorians, we know that this is our foundation. And if it is out of order, we are out of sync too. As this was happening, my anxiety and stress levels were calming down. And of course, as always, my thoughts went to Maria Montessori and what would she have done? We were in a stay-home order with no idea about how long this might last. Dr. Montessori, on the other hand, was thrown out of her own country, spent some years in Spain before she was escorted out one night and taken to England. There, with Europe on the brink of war, she accepted an invitation by the Theosophical Society to come to India for 4 months. With nowhere else to go, she accepted this invitation and with her son Mario, landed in India in November 1939. Now, granted, she was given a hero's welcome. But just imagine, even for a few seconds, how uncomfortable it must have been for her, especially as things got progressively harder. Mario was considered to be a threat and taken away from her and put in jail. And whereas this beautiful Alcott bungalow overlooking the Bay of Bengal, she was in theory confined to this place. She was not allowed to move around freely, being restricted always to a zone of 5 miles. As I write in chapter 10 of my book, I imagined Maria Montessori in a white, very loose-fitting, full-length gown, walking up and down most of the time in the open balcony of this bungalow. What had she been thinking as she lived in this foreign country that showered her with respect and strived to meet all of her needs? Did she miss the way of life she was used to? Or was she so absorbed in studying the universal bambino that it did not matter to her where she was? So this is a picture of the Alcott bungalow where Montessori lived for about 3 to 4 years. And you can see over here the balcony, and this is the story that her students that I met in India told me about, that she would be seen facing this balcony up and down every evening. And it was a beautiful scene from there because you could see the gardens. There was a beautiful sunken garden that you could look at. And then out there was the Bay of Bengal. So the view was amazing. But just imagine, no internet, no connections to your home country, to your grandchildren or anything. And what that must have felt like. So I'm going to take this away. Okay. So I had paced this balcony several years ago, thinking about her and marveling how focused she had been, not knowing if she would ever return to Europe, leave alone her home country, or see her grandchildren again. She did not allow her work to stop. When she told her host that she could not train teachers without a school for children where she could observe them, what did they do? They opened a school for her on the first floor of the bungalow. She needed time, she said, to study the Indian educational situation, for her methods must adapt themselves to the needs of different children all over the world. And here she witnessed the effortless absorption of language, the development of movement and independence amongst children, where there was no distinction of class or religion. And I'm sure you all have seen this beautiful picture of her observing at the Alcott bungalow. So let me try and show that to you. Here is a picture of Maria Montessori observing in the Alcott bungalow. She lived on the first floor, and this is the ground floor. And this is what she used to do. So let's take that away. Her work continued in this strange land, and the stay lengthened from 4 months to 5 years. And we are complaining here about a month, 2 months. She worried that all of her work in Europe was lost, with her schools shut down by Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. And one of the gentlemen I met in Chennai told me, and I'm going to pull his picture up so you can see him too. So this is one of the gentlemen that I met in Chennai, and he told me that he had promised Maria Montessori that till he was living, her books would stay in print. He has kept up to his promise. This man is Mr. Nachyapan, and he told me that he was one of the few people in Chennai that knew how to drive. And so he was asked to take Montessori around the city. When I persisted, and when I really mean I persisted on some personal stories, he was able to share with me how Montessori hardly ever drank any water, preferring lemonade and coffee instead. Montessori's words, as she addressed the audience for her first training course in India, are worth remembering and discussing. And so Montessori said, "I feel as I stand facing you that this is one of the greatest moments in my life. For many decades of years, the child has helped and revealed to me something which lay in the depths of its soul. And my work has been the work of a follower who has discovered something and followed that child, followed that something which had been discovered in the soul of the child. But how much lack of comprehension, how much misunderstanding have I not met in so many countries because the people thought I was talking about a method of education, while I was speaking of a revelation given to me by the soul." Montessori found this deep and clear understanding of what she had been trying to do in India, where, as she describes it, she found the awakened spirit and soul. She goes on to say, "I will not talk about a method of educating children, but about something which has been revealed by the children, which had come forth from the child's soul." And this is so important for us to reflect upon, particularly in this time that we find ourselves in. We are without our materials, and suddenly all those albums we created with so much detail are not standing us in good stead. We are scrambling to recreate those materials in virtual form. Have we stopped to think if this is what the child needs? And is this what following the child means? The child is our treasure. And in the process of cultivating him, we as teachers must be transformed too. A method implies something that is set in stone. And this is the one thing that Montessori way is not. We could have a knitting method when someone tells you exactly what to do to create a sweater. That refers to a prescribed experience. Someone has done it before and tells you exactly what to do to recreate this product. But as we are scrambling to give the children the prescribed Montessori experiences, which we think make up the method, we have forgotten that this is not what Montessori is. For those of us who have not done the substitution of the virtual methods for the concrete, I would love to carry on this discussion and reflect on how we have changed during this time and how our practice is forever transformed. Things got harder for Montessori, even though she was reunited with Mario. Mahatma Gandhi, thinking this was the best present that he could give her, had Mario released from prison. However, now that England had joined the war and with India under British rule, the Montessoris were now considered to be enemy aliens. The grounds of the Theosophical Society were converted into an army base, and it was no longer safe to have them in Chennai. Also, with Montessori's failing health, it was noted that Chennai was too hot for her, and so they moved her to the hill station of Kodaikanal. The house there was very simple, something that met their needs, but Montessori was very depressed here. She missed the cultural and the political bustle of a big city, and she had no teachers to train or children to observe. She often asked, "What can I do here?" So this is the house that in Kodaikanal that the Montessoris lived in. Very simple house called the Rosebank, which I talk about in my book, how difficult it was to find because I was looking, all we had was just the name of the house, no address, nothing, and how we found it. And it was an amazing journey there. But it was here during this period and under these circumstances, something that I remind myself of when I get down and out, that something beautiful was born. You see, they had none of the didactic apparatus with them in Kodaikanal, sounding familiar to most of us now as we experience the stay-at-home order. So what did she do along with Mario and another student of hers who had accompanied them to Kodaikanal? they used nature as their teaching tools. That is Kodaikanal. So they were using nature here as their teaching tools. They built aquariums, they built terrariums, they let the children see the collaboration between plants and animals. They studied trees, they cultivated plants, and they saw purpose in everything that existed. It was here in beautiful Kodaikanal that the theosophical vision of universal unity and the interdependency that exists in nature was generated. Again, Montessori never gave up. Her work for the child continued as she laid the foundation for cosmic education. As Maria Montessori writes, we had made a new discovery which was special and long-lasting, and it all came about in the hills of Kodaikanal, where practice and ideas met and a better vision emerged. It was here that so many of the materials that we speak about or that we teach about today, botany, the story of the universe, geography charts, were all created. Just imagine what she did. Using a resource that was plentiful around her, nature, and writing a curriculum that had no boundaries and is still relevant today. It arouses the child's interests and intensifies his sense of belonging through time and space, giving him a vision of the whole universe. It was here too, like all the hill stations in India, which house the best the best elementary schools and schools that are of international repute, that the birth of Montessori elementary education took place. It was in 1944 that the first junior course or the teacher training course for the 6 to 12-year-old was given. The foundation of the Assistance to Infancy course was also laid down in India. This is where Montessori published her book, The Absorbent Mind, which became the foundation of the Assistance to Infancy course in the hands of Adele Costagnochi. Nothing was lost, as Montessori found out on her return to Europe. As a matter of fact, so much was gained. The spiritual dimension to her teacher training originated in India as well, and as we all know, sets us apart from all other teachers. The aims of the Theosophical Society have similarities with the Montessori philosophy: respect for all things, freedom of thought, and the development of latent potentialities in individuals. So coming back to our own situation right now, we are in a war too. The only difference being that the enemy is invisible. There is so much uncertainty and tons of insecurity that is causing us stress and anxiety. We do not know if we can meet our expenses this month or the next, and if our schools will survive this global crisis. Montessori did not either. But what we can learn from her and what kept her strong through it all was her focus on the child. She did not let anything come in the way of studying the child, and neither should we. Let her inspire us at a time when we need it most. And this is what she says: I assure you that were I not absolutely certain that mankind can be bettered, I should not have had the strength to battle for 50 years, having so frequently had to begin again when my work was destroyed by others. I would not have had the strength at my age to travel the world proclaiming the truth. I know that most of us jumped into action when the stay-home order was announced. We had to meet the needs of the children. That was our most pressing need. Our teachers had told us that the most important period of life is not the age of university studies, but the first one, the period from birth to the age of 6. Montessori's philosophy of education came as a result of her observation of the child, which resulted in her focusing her attention on the youngest of children, declaring that education begins at birth and the child's psychic powers must be guarded in his earliest years. And this is why I disagreed with all the public schools around us and the private schools too, who have totally disregarded the younger child, going to virtual education only for the elementary years. This is something I knew that we could not do. This is exactly what Montessori had said should not happen, that we should focus on the first 6 years of a child's life. This is what we did, disagreeing with the schools all around us. And I want to share this with you because we learned as we went, observing the children and following their needs. And I believe you can't get more Montessori than that. We closed on Friday, and by Monday morning, we had our virtual classrooms organized and ready to go. My driving force was staying connected with the children. We had worked so hard to give them a strong sense of community and belonging, and knew that it was even more critical to continue that work going forward. Now, as we are in our 5th year of remote learning, we continue to reflect a lot and observing the children, seeing what works and adapting the curriculum to meet the individual needs. This is not easy. In fact, it is really tough because there are so many variables to consider. But that does not mean that we give up or that we let it slide. So we keep adding to what we've done. We keep changing things to meet the needs of the children. So we have Zoom classes twice a day for an hour each time. And during this time, we are trying very hard to connect with the children. We find topics that are interesting to the child, do show and tell, discuss what they did yesterday, and so on. We want to be sure that their emotional and social needs are being met. In fact, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that we have to deal with as we come out of this crisis. And then depending on the children, we do things like floating and sinking. We help them to set these things up in their own homes. We read a book, we sing the songs that we like. That's what we do during our Zoom classes. But we are not creating the short beat stare and doing that virtually on, all of that. We also offer choice activities in the Google Classroom. There are about 10 different areas that we have done and several choices within that area. And we've explained to the parents that at any time you can ask the child which area of the curriculum he would like to do, and then give him 2 choices. And then you can print out the worksheets, or you can bring out a plant, whatever it is that the child wants to do, and the child can work on it on his own. So by doing this, we have tried to imitate virtually the prepared environment. Free choice, follow the child, cycle of activity as the basic tenets of Montessori philosophy. Yesterday, a parent shared with us, and it was amazing because the child had wanted to do subtraction. So the parent printed out subtraction, the tables, and the child did it on her own and went back to the mother and gave the page to her. And the mother noticed that the child had done all the subtraction, even though the problems or the sums were written out in English, she had all the answers in Chinese, because we are a Mandarin bilingual school. And so the child had automatically, and I thought that was just amazing that she had brought both the languages in and she had just done it spontaneously on her own. We also have activity packets that we prepare on Friday afternoon, and parents pick up in time for the work week. And in these packets, we have hands-on materials for the children, and in particular, the ones that we know that they love: sewing works, gluing, cutting, origami. We just received feedback that the origami has been a super hit. And so this week we will be putting in more origami. So, whatever the parents are telling us, the feedback we are putting in. And lastly, we also have the child meet with their teacher for 15 to 30 minutes a day for individual time. So this is the time for the teachers to meet with the children and connect at a meaningful level. So it could be something as simple as that the child is working with his Lego, it's spontaneous time, not necessarily academic, but the teacher just joins the child and talks to the child. So the child has that time of connection. We also have support groups for the families, and I meet them along with their teachers. And this is the time when we try to caution the families not to make their home into a school. Instead of encouraging them to replicate Montessori materials at home and flood the children with worksheets, we ask them to look at the home environment and perhaps do some real practical activities there. What an amazing opportunity this is for that. We suggest polishing silver or brass, taking care of a plant, arranging flowers in a vase, setting up the placemats. As you know, these are terrific one-to-one correspondence and math at its very best. We ask them if they are talking with relatives across the country and suggesting where to look those places up in the map. What a wonderful way to learn geography. So they're just doing many things of reading and writing and practical life at home. One thing that we were very sure that we did not want was that the parents should be teachers, because we believe parents should be parents. Of course, none of this is ideal. And we cannot wait to get back in the classroom and do what we do best. But we have tried to make Montessori real and alive during these very difficult times. And I've always been amazed at how loving and caring our teachers have been. They will go out of their way. If a child cannot come to the school to pick up the activity packets, they will go to the houses of the children and drop them off. So I feel that we are stronger, we are more united as a community, and I hope that this is one of the positives that has come out of this crisis, that once we are back in the physical campus of our school, we will continue to rely on each other. Staying authentic to the philosophy, adapting to the circumstances, providing the children with meaningful activities, and finding every opportunity to deepen connections is what we are focusing on as we maneuver these unprecedented times. We reflect a lot, we meet a lot, we're constantly asking ourselves, what can we do to better meet the needs of the children? And this is definitely keeping us strong, just as we know it kept Montessori strong during her exile in India. And lastly, on some good news, that in Colorado, like other parts of the world, preschools are beginning to open. And as we prepare our policies and procedures, I lean on Montessori again, this time for courage. She always was so brave and daring and handled all the adversities in her life with so much strength. She truly was mighty, fighting all odds for the child. And I am convinced we can do it too. Thank you.